is the regularly scheduled, slight 1 minute late, scheduled meeting of the Landmark Preservation Board, City of Syracuse. Today is January 19th, and those present for today's meetings are
Tom Cantwell.
Bob Haley,
Julia Marshall.
Jeff Romano.
Cynthia Carter.
And Kate Auetter.
and we have a number of excused absences due to illness. Colds out there around us are much more severe. We're hearing from many people, and more numerous, so be cautious. Yeah, we have
So Don Radke, Petrona Rouser, and Lisa Tonzi
good, thank you.
are
Excused.
excused.
Thank you. Okay, going on to need a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any comment or corrections needed?
Nope.
Noted. Bob, you have anything?
Yep, I do, thank you. In the discussion, under the first project for the Mitzvah Tower, I thought that the comment in the middle of the paragraph, is proposed to replace the final 20 windows with the same double hung windows. That's correct. The next sentence, in addition to the exterior pans, there will be installed over the stained glass windows of the sanctuary space, I thought. Let me make sure I'm right about that.
It's sanctuary space as well as the third floor.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's what I'm trying to correct, is the sanctuary space wasn't mentioned specifically here. So I'd like to add sanctuary space and third floor,
Okay.
which are the remaining stained glass, to be treated in a different way than the windows are in progress.
Okay.
Any other comments? If not, thank you for motion to approve the minutes. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Moving on to today's agenda. First, old business. We have no old business, although that's all of our business here. I always have a problem with that statement. Well, yeah, sure.
Very good.
New business today is the look at the Mitzvah Tower window and door replacement project. First is the applicant here to answer questions. Thank you. Please introduce yourself again. Yes, thank you. Have a seat, Michael, if you'd like. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's see here. Some of us, we have looked at the new drawings. I'd like to present your current new information.
Yeah, last meeting, it was requested to provide some photos of the interior conditions of the
Right.
place, which you should have in front of you.
Yes.
Right.
As you see, none of the openings were modified. Each window was connected to the existing window. The only addition that we've added is some structural insulation. Thermal reasons, trying to maintain as many of the existing trends on the interior as possible. We think it's not a lot of, they provide some additional photos of the door on the street level. There was a question about the window. Yes, that's pretty much it.
And you're applying, your application is in for continuance. We have to review this application for the.
Yeah, it's
ex-
the additional,
It's-
so it's
yeah.
really for the windows, the 120, now 140 windows, and the door. And you'll submit for the exterior panels at a later date.
Yes, the exterior, over the
Sanctuary glass, the stained glass. Right. I'd like to make a comment on that. I think last time we requested, but we'd like to be specific, that a full-size drawn detail of the window jamb showing the new construction and the existing is very important. Full-size won't be that big. It'd be about, it need to be a drawing about that size. Or something close to that, so that the impact on the existing window frames can be seen clearly.
Yep.
That's critically important in terms of the exterior of the building.
Understood.
Thank you. So that when that comes in, that should be applied for.
Yeah, will not be an issue.
Thank you. regarding the replacement, the second part is the 6 windows or 12 windows. The 12 windows are over the over the stained glass, is that right? In the western portion of the,
Yeah, those are the ones that are gonna be the next application.
okay, all right, including the ones on the upper floors, all right. Then let's go back to the replacement windows, which I hope we haven't had a site visit, but I think most of the board members have been able to visit or study this. And the application is for continuing with another 20, is it? I'm sorry for not having the numbers right here. I know that's basically in the same way that the existing were put in. Okay, is the board clear on the type of windows? These are vinyl windows, they are double hung windows, and they are replacing a casement, I believe a wood casement, of the original project, which were severely damaged. Some of us have been through the building years ago and saw that in progress, and some others may not have seen them. So what's the view of the board on the application? Any comments?
Well, we don't generally approve vinyl to begin with.
Right. I have an issue.
This is a change in type from casement to double hung. When you look at it from the exterior, the profile is not the same. So although there was an attempt to make the windows similar from the inside, it's not the same from the outside. I don't believe we would have approved the first 120 windows, so I don't see how we can approve an additional 20 windows of this type.
That's a pretty clear comment. This is one of our photographs. Have you seen this one? I just want to share that with you. It's one that was taken showing the two right next to each other. It's been very helpful. It's very helpful to remind us of the issues.
Right.
And I think everyone has that. You have that
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Right, great.
Yeah, I mean, and the casement window, without being a double hung, having the center meeting rails, allows for the vertical expression of the building to come through, and where now we have a double hung where that solid meeting rail happens, and it breaks that vertical line of the building, which to me disrupts the integrity of the structure, or of the design of the
It does, but
of
for
the
an
structure.
apartment, it's a safety issue. You can have a
Yeah.
casement.
No, I appreciate your point. I want to address that point specifically
Sure.
myself, so thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure what could be applied to an awning window, or a casement window, excuse me, to stop that measure, to prevent that fall. I don't know if there's a bar that could be applied to the inside to protect the occupant. I'm sure there's something that could be fixed if the casement is swinging out. I'm not sure if those were in swing. I think
They're outswing.
based on their outswing. Okay, so that even helps
Okay.
with the ability to open the window.
Want to keep that?
If you had a bar on the inside to protect for a fall measure.
You want to keep this?
No, it's fine.
All right. Other comments? I will go further in the last comment that was mentioned, and to kind of read the basic premise of this. Standard 2 of the Secretary of Interior Standards, removal of distinctive materials or alteration of features that are unique to this character of this property should not be done. These are one of the 10 standards of the Secretary of Interior. The guidelines are basic rule set for review. It says that distinctive materials, features of scale and material should not be removed. And item 9, and I'm only hitting a couple of these, will not destroy historic materials and features and spatial relationships with the character of the property. Those are the specific features of the Secretary Standards, and there are others that would warrant the comments you've heard about replacing casements as a type, replacing wood, which we understand the material deterioration, a common situation. But the casement and the material change to vinyl are major items, and particularly the material vinyl is something that we have not approved in the past, and are not, and I say we have not improved them in the past. They're not recommended for historic restoration work and not appropriate for this structure. I would also say, as the board is supporting all the historic structures in the city, the efforts of this particular owner in restoration are understood and appreciated. The process here is at hand. The critical issue is the process and the procedures and the guidance by experts to the enhancement of the value of this particular project. So with those two items, is there any other discussion?
I would like to point out
Oh.
that there's only 3 or 4 windows on the historic side that, out of the additional 20,
Right,
the rest are on the interior
on the
side.
backside, fine. That would have been a very logical approach for a variance or a logical approach or a request for a change of procedural window type. I want to go back to the point, which I did skip over and didn't mean to, about the security. Double hung windows come with security measure hardware for, and casement windows can be controlled to open to a minimum of 5 or 7 inches for safety reasons, which are required, which are absolutely required. So the double hung does not, in fact, as you meant, unless this window has hardware on it, will also let somebody fall out. In other words, the windows that were selected, the double hung, appear to be, without special locks, also susceptible to opening for residential use where children could fall out.
And there are limiters.
Pardon me?
There are limiters on it.
That's,
Yeah, but we don't know that.
yeah, exactly. No, that's a very good point. We did not see the windows. We did not have this chance to make these comments, so we do not know what the Windows has as far as limiters. But that is available as hardware options, so that is not a case for justification, but we understand the point of view. Other comments? Yes, Tom?
I have some general comments. First of all, the scope of the project and the fact that you're starting out looking at 140 windows, which is, for me as a homeowner, an enormous number of windows. However, that's the way the building is built. I guess, having had some experience with vinyl windows in my own home and with homes of friends, I have become increasingly disenchanted with vinyl windows, that they don't hold up. And I've dealt with cracks in one particular house, a friend of mine who is trying to figure out how to keep his house tighter in the winter. That vinyl is simply an inferior building material, and it is frequently chosen because of cost. Now, the fact is that so many of these windows have already been replaced, and so I think we face some sort of consideration. Do we say, well, these are pretty high up? Do we want to consider any kind of retroactive disapproval of this? 140 windows. I guess what's been already mentioned, the fact that these windows were replaced everywhere. As far as the exterior of the building is concerned, I guess I would always be more worried about the street sides rather than the interior surfaces of the building, and also how high the windows are. Certainly for aesthetic reasons, how high are the windows? And that's why I guess right away I noticed that some of the lower windows here at the 3rd floor had not yet been replaced, so that we could, before the fact, consider asking for a better window replacement than vinyl windows. The upper stories, they have virtually been all replaced. So I think that there are actually 2 issues concerning the windows. One, the height of the 3rd floor, and then the other windows that are higher up.
Okay, thank you. Are there
Does
other?
that make sense to you all?
Yes, it's complicated, but it makes sense.
I
certainly.
mean,
Oh, I didn't mean to make it.
No, not you.
No, this,
project
The
is.
project's complicated and
I mean, I have a problem with, number one, we're offered these elevations, and in fact, the windows are drawn as if they were casements, and as if they were divided, a true divided light. And they're not. I mean, based on the pictures, what has been changed out are double-hung windows that have applied mutton bars.
Yeah, if I can reiterate, I did not draw the windows that were replaced, so what you're looking at is an existing elevation. Those were
Right,
replaced.
and that's my issue, because when we're looking and considering it, we should be looking at what we have.
what's
And
proposed.
the fact that 120 windows were changed out with material that this board would not approve had they come, I'm conjecturing, but, you know, we have not approved vinyl windows because it would be inappropriate. And then the vinyl windows that you are proposing, you know, it has applied mutton bars, and so the imagery based on this photo, you know, side by side, is not conducive to the image of the building. I mean, having, you know, yes, you have applied mutton bars, but you can't see them. There's a reason that these were true divided light in a casement, and there are manufacturers that make windows that have true divided light, whether it be a casement or a double hung, that would maintain the aesthetics of the original building.
And just-
in my opinion, you know, I have a real problem with it because it really is not reflecting anything of the
doesn't look the
interior
same.
standards.
And just to add a point, true divided light's, of course, the most expensive. And you can
Right.
get an exterior surface applied grills
Yeah.
that would give that appearance without the extra cost of true divided lights, just to make a point.
Correct.
Right.
Some
Right.
point. There are degrees of economies here that can be saved and applied to the project.
Also, the number of panes is different. It's 4/4 in the double hung, whereas it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6/6 or 12.
Well, 12, just 6, yeah.
Yeah, it's 12 as opposed to 8 panes.
Right.
So the
Okay,
scale
those-
there is
It's-
These are
greatly
all,
changed.
these are all technical points about the window change. We can have another choices here, and I look for the board's direction on this. First of all, we have a higher number of people who are not here, who have not been able to address this, so we may wish to
Push it up.
consider that. Also, people may want to reconsider and look. I have seen the windows from the exterior, I've not gone in. The photographs are fine. We may want to have some people visit the site. And the third part I might have us consider is, should we wait for the application of the exterior portion and consider approving it as one package? Or, okay?
My recommendation was for the board to look at the work that has already been done,
Okay.
plus the additional 20 windows. And that also, by the way, includes the door.
Right, and the verification of the color of the glass on the door.
As a part from the new work that's being proposed. That, it was my
Okay.
recommendation that we do, that the board receive 2 applications.
Thank you, I just wanted to have the board consider that at this moment as far as moving forward. Is there a recommendation for moving forward on this? A
The
motion?
door is also part of this application, so you might want to,
Yeah, is-
You said there was a picture of the door in here. There's a picture of a door that's an emergency exit.
No,
that's not the,
no.
Yeah, but there is no picture of.
Am I
of the
missing
door.
the entry, the Jefferson Street entrance
We
door?
all,
Resident-
I don't have it.
That's the residential entrance, correct? For the,
the door isn't,
That's the,
Should be here. I've seen it.
that will actually end up being
I
the
don't have it either.
entrance to the office.
there was.
Is that the entrance to the residence as well?
Entrance to the door.
No.
That,
Okay, we don't have.
you don't have the
I don't
door.
have a picture of the door. Now, I've seen it in person, but
Yeah, I apologize, I don't know why the picture of the door is
Well,
not.
it isn't in there. The new door is not there. I haven't seen it either. And the glass color was, it's a bronze door, although I'd like to,
Bronze
we
door,
needed the
right.
technical information on that, including the type of glass. Yeah.
bronze with mirrored glass.
Is it mirrored glass? It is mirrored, it's, It is clear?
Yeah, I took the photos of it.
Okay.
Okay.
You can see into the building on the street. I don't know when you go by if it was not backlit or if it was just lighting.
It was 8 o'clock in the morning when I saw it.
Which is the service door there?
The service door?
Yeah.
I think it's missing.
Which is the door that's been replaced? The service door
Is it missing?
with a canopy?
Oh, it's here.
That's what I thought. Thank you. All right. It's the western door, the small western door. It has the canopy over it too.
Yeah, the canopy is over.
Right. That canopy's original?
That is original.
Yes.
The bulbs were just replaced, just
Yeah.
restored.
Right. I
It's
saw
not
it-
drawn as a door.
Saw it a week
Right.
ago.
I mean, the drawings need to be updated. If we're talking about a door, it should be drawn.
And we need a spec on that door in terms of the door material and the window material. We need to know exactly what it is. I visited it too, and it appeared to be gold, but it could have been the wrong type of light. If the sun was coming in on it, it would have been the backlight from the cathedral coming into it. Okay, so is there a motion here to either postpone the vote on this or consider the vote for the existing windows? Kate, advice again? I have to ask for this.
Can we postpone it until the rest of the board is here?
Hold it, you can hold it
We
open.
can hold it open?
Hold the application open. If you're asking for,
Additional information?
additional information that would include updated drawings to
Right.
show the double
Changes.
hung, as well as the
Service door.
side door, the Jefferson
Right.
Street door.
All right.
drawn properly,
So
and then
is there,
any other additional information that you would like?
Does anyone on the board want to make any comment about the material?
Well, Cynthia made the comment, and
we've already
I would
had-
concur with the same comment, that
Vinyl's not appropriate for the,
and I read also.
Okay, so that was included, okay.
Yes, and I made the comment from the standards about material change as well. And I made the statement, and Cynthia did, and you did, so that's
Okay.
pretty clear there.
So this is just comment, so it's in the motion?
No,
no,
Not in the motion, okay.
so let's,
we're
yes,
gonna hold it.
So the board has so you can either make a motion to approve or deny or approve with conditions, or you, if there is additional information that you would like
Yeah.
from the applicant, you can hold it open until the next meeting.
okay. Then I think the recommendation is to hold it open to the next meeting, if that's okay with the applicant, and to get technical information on the doors, and to visit the site if necessary. If anyone wants to visit the site and the board members that are not here, we will schedule that as soon as possible within the week.
and updated drawings.
Yeah, updated drawings.
All right, then we'll hold that for further discussion, and,
Is that,
Yep, that's fine.
thank you, thank you. Appreciate that, thanks.
Thanks.
That's it for today, thank you very much.
If they were exterior applied, it would look more like that.
Oh, Kate, did you include my comment about the third floor?
Yes.
I sort of had a different feeling about the third floor versus the higher floors.
I've got that, and that will be included in the minutes, so that when the full board is back, they'll be able to consider that too.
Okay, then the second item for today is the Temple Concord project. Continuing here, we've asked the applicant to update us on your changes from, or your progress since the last meeting.
Good morning, Brian Bouchard with CHA. Also the project team, James Strasher with CHA. We have Mike O'Shea with QPK. We have Stephanie Thiel with Cube 3 Design, the project architect, and Aaron Stang from LMP Syracuse. So this is the project, sorry.
You want those names, or?
you got all those names?
I've got, actually, we have the sign-in sheet.
Yep,
too,
it's
so
right
we're
over
good.
here.
Yeah.
Very good. So this is the project at 910 Madison. It's the former Temple of Concord. As this board is aware, we submitted a certificate of appropriateness application some time ago, greater than 2 years at this point. We then went through a variety of meetings with this board to talk about design changes, et cetera. We then completed our process with the Board of Zoning Appeals. And at the last meeting, which was more of a work session capacity, we refamiliarized this board with the project, gained a little bit of dialogue and feedback from the board, and then what we have done is formally submitted the updates to the certificate of appropriateness based on the current project at hand. So the files that you have are the current existing conditions site survey, the full packet of site plan drawings, and then also the architectural renderings, the floor plans, and elevations along with building materials that have been submitted. So because this is more of our formal certificate of appropriateness start, I'll probably reiterate just some of the general project details and the process that transpired to get us to this point today, and then turn it over to the architects for some more specific comments regarding those updates that we talked about last time. So just to reiterate, the project site is located at the corner of University Ave and Madison Street. The site is currently occupied by the Temple of Concord, although the building is now vacant. Consists of the Temple Sanctuary, which was the original construction, and we have submitted to this board in the past a variety of historical analysis that went through the architecture and architect and how over the years other portions of this site have been developed with more modern construction for school facilities and office facilities. The remainder of the site in the rear portion has a surface parking lot. Site's 2.08 acres in the residential Class B district and does comply with majority of the existing zoning regulations for the districts, including that residential apartments, which is the project, is an allowable use. There were certain variances that we did get approved through the Board of Zoning Appeals. Those consisted of setbacks, density, and structural coverage. What is proposed is a partial demolition of some of the newer construction of the existing building, preserving the entirety of the Temple Sanctuary itself, and then the new construction of a residential apartment building that consists of 210 units, along with an underground and at-grade parking garage contained within the building that provides 210 parking spaces, meeting the parking requirement. Throughout the site plan that you can see here, there's other areas that we've talked about in the past, including preserving not only that Temple Sanctuary, but the site surrounding it along the street frontages. So those green spaces, kind of that crest of a hill, and the grand staircase that leads up to the front of the building from University Ave. Adjacent to it on University Ave, we have that appendage of the building for new construction where we've left a courtyard and amenity space to interact with the street in terms of the pedestrian travel that happens along University Ave. As we know, the city spent a lot of time and effort on the connective corridor, for which we are basically at the front door, kind of promoting that pedestrian activity between the university area and downtown. So we'll take advantage of that with sidewalk connections, courtyard space that interact more closely with the glass facade of the new construction, but also connect to the front stoop of the Temple Sanctuary. We also have a variety of streetscape improvements and utility improvements that are shown on the site plan drawing, so reconstruction of the sidewalks, adding some landscaping and streetscape treatments along the Madison Ave frontage with landscaping and benches, along with those new sidewalks, taking down the overhead power lines, and burying those utilities for access to the building, not only for fire, but also visual aesthetics as well. So as I mentioned, we did leave this board, and it's important to note that we did go through a very long process with the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I went through this at the work session, but I'm going to reiterate it again because it was a very lengthy process that touched on a lot of aspects of the review of this project as a whole. And just because this board may not be as familiar with that process, I'll review it. Essentially, we submitted to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the variances that are required. What that does is trigger a review process, which is a state environmental quality review process. So that process was completed by the Board of Zoning Appeals, where we went through a variety of impacts from land, groundwater, utilities, aesthetic resources, and what that document does is allow the determination to be made that the project's also consistent with things like the land use plan and community character, but did trigger one specific item, is that because of the historic nature of that temple, that there could be potential impacts related to the new project. So that pushed us to a more in-depth process to create an environmental impact statement, which specifically analyzed the assessment of the historic and cultural resources on this site. And I know that this board was a party to that document and had a chance to review it as well. And also outlined mitigation measures to which the project would not have any significant impact on those historic and cultural resources. So the Board of Zoning Appeals completed that process.
It didn't say that there wasn't, it said that there was and that they had to be mitigated.
Correct, that is correct. So the determination is first, will there be a potential for impacts? And that question was answered yes for the historic. So there, because of the construction, there's a potential. And because there's a potential, then we have to write the more lengthy document, which is the environmental impact statement, that does specifically address that potential and how those potentials can be mitigated within the design. Part of that process to prove what we were doing for mitigation was to actually engage with the State Historic Preservation Office. So we sent all of the project files and documents to SHPO. And in the end, SHPO provided us with their approval, which is by way of what's called a letter of resolution. That letter of resolution was presented to this board as well, and that had 8 stipulations regarding what the project is obligated to do to ensure that there's no negative impacts to these resources. These stipulations went through some very basic items, such as making sure that this project moving forward in our permitting process and construction process coordinates with the State Department, and also coordinates specifically with the original user of the facility, which was the Temple of Concord. As you read through those, some of them were things like providing an interpretive sign that we could create that has historical photos and has an opportunity for the public along the street to look at it with some statements about the history of the site and what it may have looked like before. Sure.
Please, I just want it to be clear that you're saying there is no adverse impact. It says here, if you go down, whereas, the
Yep.
third whereas, which constitutes an adverse impact. There is an adverse impact. You are mitigating it, but don't say there isn't one, because there is.
Okay, sure. Understood. I was trying to take you through the process, and the beginning of the process was identifying the potential for that. And then you're right. In the end, all of the documentation in the 2 years that we spent resulted in that there would not be an adverse impact. That is correct. That was the finding statement that was made by the.
Will be an adverse impact which you are mitigating.
Correct.
That-
Based on the mitigation, correct. That is correct.
It's a good point, and it's a point of intention that's important here. You're correct in your statement, and the statement is correct that there is an adverse effect which you are mitigating,
Exactly, yep.
and therefore this is the process.
Yes, and the
So-
mitigation is certainly
Is the
outlined.
response to the adverse, yes. So
Yes.
this is the answer to it.
Yep.
Thank you.
And in order to accomplish that mitigation, there's stipulations that the project is held to, signed by, the state of New York and the applicant's team as a commitment through that letter of resolution. So,
Like I say, the intention is, and you've addressed the intention, to resolve the adverse effect with this. So
Yep.
there is an adverse effect, quote unquote, and this is the response to it, to follow it to its legitimate conclusion, which is stated clearly here. I
exactly.
think the caution is, at this point, separating from the actual legalese, the caution here is on the construction phase. And it's interesting when you read between the lines. The burden is on the retention of those qualities of the original temple. And that has to do with how you take down the back and approach the exact temple itself. This is a sidebar. But the quality of care to avoid further negative impact is through the construction specificity of the demolition coming back to your construction line. What's interesting about this, and it's a sidebar, but you remember 2 years ago, this board identified the site of the temple that was stated as historic, and the project has evolved past that to reduce the space at the back of the temple from about 13 feet to approximately 7 or 8 feet.
Correct, yeah.
And that's how the project has evolved, but that puts the burden on the quality of construction control, which may require expertise, specialist expertise for that part of the work, that this resolution is addressing clearly from SHPO about further damage, about material uses. Those decisions are critical and implied in this.
Understood, yeah. I'll make one transition into what we've changed. So I mean, that's generally the process that has taken place in the site plan and things like that. With our package was the architectural elevations, the renderings, and the floor plan. I'll touch on one item. Stephanie can add to it if we can, but we've addressed one of those. And then specific to your questions about the construction involving the temple itself, Mike O'Shea has prepared some additional dialogue for that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's.
So the only change that was made, and one of the topics that we talked about last time, was a disconnection between what we're seeing in the visual rendering with the step back along Madison and what was represented in the floor plan. We have gone back and resubmitted for you the 6th floor plan that does specifically call out that 18-inch step back that's visually represented on the floor plans. So the previous floor plans really didn't capture it, essentially, but the rendering, as was pointed out by the board before, provides a lot of impact that should be represented on those floor plans. So we did take, and what we're referring to here is this facade along Madison. At the 6th floor elevation, there's not only a break in material, but there's a perceived change in depth.
Right.
That wasn't fully represented on the floor plans. So we did give you a revised 6th floor plan, but we also gave you an enlarged floor plan specifically on this corner that shows that that 5th floor actually projects out that 18 inches so that you can get that forward view along Madison Street. And then there was kind of a side comment, if it was possible to continue that step along this easterly unit. It's difficult to mimic the 18 inches because of some of the depth that we have within the unit itself, but we did provide a 6-inch step that kind of wraps that corner in some fashion that we could accommodate there.
That goes back to depth of that unit?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have those
And
drawings.
then there's a break in that unit. So again, this was the elevation that we were looking at here with that step. And it's also shown.
Might be
And that's in addition to the other step that we had more prominent along the 2 interior corners of the temple, where we actually stepped that back 10 feet on the upper floor there as well. So we did make that change, and then I think more of the historic construction comments that the chairperson was talking to, Mike's prepared to address with some additional figures and discussion that we have based on that connection point.
Thank you for those plan comments on the accuracy of that, because it now implies the renderings that were shown,
Yep.
so thank you. Any
Understood.
other questions on the, for Brian? on the board? If not, Mike, go ahead.
Very good.
Thank you.
More paper for you.
I was gonna say, I'm
Well, I
getting.
love the scale of these
Yeah,
productions, by the way. These are so much fun. You
Well,
know, last night when I went through this,
Oh, yeah.
I went way down into this until I flipped the page and saw your enlargement. But I got it.
It's easier on the giant pieces of paper.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Thank you.
Well, it's largely readable.
Yeah.
I hope you can read those, Tom. Good morning, Mike O'Shea, QPK Design, 450 South Salina Street. So, Bob, to address your comments specifically, what we've outlined here for you is loosely based on Kate's September 17th, 2020, really 5 bullet points focusing on the sanctuary. So the exhibit you have before you, to your point, is very definitively defining that cut line, and I have further examples of this when we go through. Also defining the definition of the hyphen in the blue line, which is approximately 8'3" as a gap there. Obviously, we're going to follow the National Park Service U.S. Department of Interior guidelines for that hyphen, not only in its relief from the existing construction to the new construction, but also in material uses in terms of contrasting materials between that. And you'll see that further in additional exhibits as you turn the page. My intent here this morning is to talk about really 3 specific items to the temple. Again, referencing that September 17th letter, the importance of the sanctuary and the visual impact. So our cut line is going to be based solely on that definitive intent to preserve the interior visual impact of the sanctuary. In addition to that, we're going to talk about the future use of the sanctuary, and you'll see exhibits in there, and I'll take you through exactly what the intent from the applicant is, as well as we discussed in some of our work sessions, the rebuilding of the approach from University Ave to the temple. We've got some existing documentation on that, as well as what we're going to propose for the new handrail. Turning the page, the second exhibit that we prepared for you is the proposed future use of that interior sanctuary. First, I'd like to point out that there's very little new wall construction. On the left-hand side, you have really precedent images, and looking closely at those, you can see that each of those examples are intent. Level the floor, as you know, that floor slopes, but leveling that floor and providing a new floor finish, painting and lighting. And that's really our full intent there. You can see from the floor plan, it's largely a FF&E, or fixtures, furnitures, and equipment solution to that interior, with banquettes on both the north and south side. The only hard construction we're looking at is near the entry, where we have two small study spaces. The intent of those partitions would be fully glazed from floor to the top, so that we can allow the exterior wall of that sanctuary to present itself well and not redefine the interior space. Turning to the right-hand images there, first at the top, and again speaking to my point about the visual protection of that sanctuary, we've outlined what we intend to preserve beginning at the top. There is what we see as a skylight, or it was, I think, an old skylight. It has been modified to present itself like a skylight today, but that is artificial light coming in there to give that halo effect. We intend to absolutely preserve that aspect. From that skylight down to the balustrade, which we intend to preserve and maintain that balustrade, there is an organ at that location. It's my understanding that the society would like to maintain that as their piece of equipment. But as you can see, that there are drapings, pleated drapings going from that skylight down to that balustrade. We intend to mimic that same exact appearance in the new construction. Moving down from the balustrade, the door right on that access point will be salvaged and refurbished. Again, all with the intent to maintain that existing visual impact. Looking from the stage back to the front door, there is an organ element there above that doorway. We're going to maintain that. The temple isn't interested in that component. Any questions about that floor plan and what the intent of the design is there?
Just for one quick point, the balustrade, if I remember, is not going to be at height that's going to meet code.
Yeah.
So how are you going to address that?
We'll probably would either remove it from the bottom and add a higher curb in similar molding to bring that up to a 42-inch guard height. Is probably the easiest way to do it. So we'll just change the proportions of that, but reuse the existing balustrade as an example.
Is that space to be occupied?
Yes, there is a small overlook at that location. You'll see it on the plan. I think it's identified here in one of the upper levels as an amenity space. It's right next to our elevator and stair, but it will be an overlook. It would be an overlook into the sanctuary.
My point is you want to use that because you could lock it off and not have to change the balustrade if it wasn't occupied.
I think from the original design, they've always had that space as usable space, so that's why I just bring up the balustrade.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand. No, it's good. I just didn't know
I
what the
mean, it's a
intent
nice
was.
space to look down.
Look down
into,
through.
so
Exactly.
just-
Glass railing
yeah.
could work.
Do you know
Yeah.
how high it is now? How high?
You know,
it is?
if
Modify any of the historic fabric.
if the board's agreeable to that, that's a good solution, Jeff.
Balustrade could be retained with a thin metal railing above it.
It could be.
Sorry.
Just to note that the LPB's jurisdiction is on the exterior, so this
Right,
is,
right. I'm
and this
just
will be
asking the
this will
question.
be more SHPO compliant,
Right.
but yeah, but it's good to have it, to know going in.
Yep, we have architects who do preservation work on the board, therefore you get a bonus. You get a bonus.
Yeah. We're just,
Yeah, you're right.
Just agreeing.
It's a small detail, but I just,
it's important. Yeah. Turning the page, you can see two exhibits here of the existing levels of the sanctuary. Focusing in on the right-hand exhibit, there's a hard red line there. That's the area that, again, is defined by SHPO and you folks as the strong visual impact of the sanctuary. Our intent is to hold that red line, so to speak, and everything, we'll say, to the north of that or page up would be removed. And that's done for various reasons, but looking back on the left-hand exhibit, there are 4 prominent columns that frame that existing wood door opening. It's a sensible, logical location for a demise between the new and existing construction. There is a bearing column line at that location. So everything to the page up, and you can see it depicted there as the choir loft. That's all part of that visual impact of the sanctuary, so we are preserving that. Flipping the page here, you can see our first exhibit from Madison, looking south. You can see the definition of the hyphen. Okay, again, following the U.S. Department of Interior's standards, we're going to use a contrasting material there. We're identifying that as a Kingspan ACM panel in the gray mica color. It's a strong contrast between the exterior finish of the temple as well as our new construction there. We are proposing, and we need to look closer at this in section, but as you recall, that image of the glowing light area there, we need to maintain that, and that is part of the proscenium of the stage. So we believe when we get down to that hard detail, we're going to have a sloped roof there so that it follows that proscenium. And then just beyond that light well, we'll drop to a flat roof as it mates up with our existing construction. There is a perspective view of that on the next page. I don't know if there's much discussion on that. It seems pretty straightforward and following the guidelines. Yes, Jeff?
You're reopening the skylight to the sky, so it's actually a
No,
skylight?
not our intent,
Okay,
but we will mimic that same glow either artificially.
right. I
Yeah.
just make sure I heard you right.
The hyphen, more technical than I probably should ask, but is that hyphen using the foundation that was existing there?
No.
So
No,
that's
it's you.
why- And that's where I'm heading, is the concern during construction that you're so close to the existing foundation.
Yep.
And the caution is, construction methods so that you don't disturb it because you're very close to failure.
No, we have.
The existing foundation, that's what I'm concerned about.
We've been down this road with the applicant. As you look at the level, our lowest level of our parking garage, and then imagine the foundation down below that, and referencing these images, there's going to be more than a 20-foot vertical cut there, and the shoring is extensive.
Right.
And we've started the understanding and the
Right,
scope of that.
I'm concerned about the vibration
Yeah.
during construction and how that impacts the existing foundation, because
Yeah.
basically you're underpinning.
An enormous underpinning, an enormous shoring task that
Okay.
we've started to investigate already, but you're correct. Just flipping through the exhibits again, you'll see 3 aerial images there defining what was that old skylight in the back half of the sanctuary. Effectively, if you look at the upper right-hand corner image, that eye-level view of Madison Street, it's 8'3" and change from the back, or I'll say the east wall of the sanctuary, that aligns roughly with that window jamb as our break point. And that's that structural line of those 4 columns.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, Michael, please?
Sure. The upper right-hand image there, you can see that one
Yes.
window on that face.
Right,
Our cut is approximately right at that jam line.
at the western jam line?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And that's your construction cut line is what you're
Right.
thinking?
Yeah.
I understand that. That's what I had assumed, and that's where I was concerned about everything that Julia just mentioned. Obviously, the stability and the damage. But let me say one slightly different thing. Yes, it's a massive construction responsibility, obviously.
right.
And the shoring for that. And I'm a little surprised, did SHPO say anything about this hyphen, as we call it, in terms of retention of material?
No, they haven't, but we have thought of that.
Yeah. I
So
know, and I guess,
if you look at the south side of the building and how the addition actually wrapped the existing temple, and I'm glad you referenced this, Bob, because we think on the Madison Street side, there's materials that we're going to salvage. Because as we demo that southern side, we don't know what we're going to uncover.
Right.
But we're going to have the resources of those existing materials to apply to that south side because it's
and
just
that's where I want
unknown.
to go. And
That's great.
I believe, and I'm surprised by this rendering, I mean, I'll say it that way. The hyphen appears to be treated differently, and where my assumption to this point was the hyphen would have been salvage stone if it could have been salvage stone. And you're saying through the construction process, you're cutting back to the actual wall of the temple, or you're cutting to that window jamb?
Correct.
Okay, good. Then my comment is, and it's a recommendation here, I feel, my instinct tells me that the hyphen should be the same stone material as the rest of the temple. And why that is, because the temple steps down with two minor buildings on either side. The back side, which then steps further, or the front side, which has the pediment over the front colonnade.
We have no objection to doing
I'm
that.
not, I'm not saying to do that. I want to bring this up for discussion.
Okay.
That to me, I had always assumed in your project till I flipped this rendering, that it would be stone, salvage stone, to that hyphen, so that it blended totally out with the temple, and you had all salvage stone simply, and you didn't damage it anymore. The fact that it's separated with a black element, I think, is a mistake, and I think it shows up in the renderings, and that's a comment for the board to discuss.
Sure. You'll notice on my very first page, I quoted, and we've been consistent with you saying we're going to renovate this to the U.S. Department of Interior standards, and I quoted actually their hyphen. If this board wants to mitigate the U.S. Department of Interior's recommendation on a hyphen, we have no objection to that.
How did they say to detail the?
The hyphen should be differentiated.
A contrasting material from the new to the existing.
But maybe it's not a hyphen.
But it's not, yeah.
But maybe, I see where you're going, Bob, because it is part of the original construction, you could call it,
Right.
that's how it's come
Not the
together.
place for a glass window, a glass
Yeah.
bar,
Yeah.
or a reflective bar. And I think the stone, the quality of the stone temple, we've been trying to retain as much as possible. And I think the comment I'm making is to retain as much of that temple as physically possible, including this element, which I wouldn't call a hyphen. It's a hyphen by false definition of a separation, but it's the actual temple itself. So I recommend that.
Yeah, we have no problem with that, we can,
Yeah, because I think it would be a stronger imagery in terms of it being separate, especially if you take the datum lines.
Sure.
starting From the pediment in the front that, runs across the north face of that building into this hyphen.
yeah, and we have the resources of the salvage material,
Yeah,
and there's
we do.
plenty of it, so,
I mean, in fact, because even if you use the stone, you're still gonna have a dark imagery
Yes.
because of the sun, the
shadow.
shadow.
True.
So you're gonna achieve the same thing.
Recess, too,
Right.
yeah.
yeah.
I'll just add too, just because this is consistent with what the board is saying, that there was discussion with SHPO about the ability to match to the greatest extent possible, and that if the facades cannot be repaired with salvage stone, that the repair in kind of like material substitute material matching is historic variance. This is a general comment. For instance, if there's broken stones, can they be repaired? But I think maybe it's getting to what you're saying with the actual facade material.
Yeah, it's the original temple, part of the original temple. Let's retain it all. And it's simply a recess, it's a shadow line. That's the way the temple was designed. It was a minor subset.
I think that's good, and that's exactly what Bob is addressing, so we'll no longer call it a hyphen.
Great.
Yeah, recess.
Yeah. Yep. The second to last page is some research we did from the Onondaga County Historical Association, and there's 3 images there that really span the life of the temple. It's interesting here that they did modify those stairs, as you can see by those examples. Lower left, it had a a cheek wall, as you define it.
Are you coming back with the cheek wall?
We have two options that we're going to propose for you, but I would also add that they had exterior lighting there, two posts that may or may not be desirable, but it's certainly something that we would consider. As you turn the page to that, we have a plan view to the left showing our proposed plaza, a walkway connecting that to the university stairs of the temple. We've proposed two concepts there that roughly mimic the historical photographs. I believe our concept A is our preference because we think it blends better with the existing plaza and that architecture there. So if there's no objections, we would move towards a resolution of concept A without those cheek walls. And that's depicted there.
I guess I would agree. I mean, in the historic photo, the cheek walls don't have handrails.
Correct.
So you have that visual, right.
It's a
So
visual
you-
barrier on that whole.
Be able to come back and just do cheek walls like that without a handrail. So
Yep.
preference, at least in my opinion, would be A.
More transparent.
I agree. To
Good.
keep it transparent.
Yeah, that's our preference, so, good.
Yeah, we're all in agreement.
Any other questions about the temple in this portion of our presentation?
Are there any other questions on that? Thank you for this detailed analysis of this critical connection.
Yeah, we feel strongly about it the way the board does, and the documentation reflects that.
Okay,
Very good, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else from the team, the design team? Thank you. It's a good upgrade. Kate, what do we recommend as
I
procedure?
did want to draw your attention, so this is a certificate of appropriateness, I did want to draw your attention to the letter that we received, that I received by email yesterday afternoon from the representative of the Sherbrooke Apartments, Sherbrooke Inc., and they have some concerns about C of A, not this particular C of A, which presumably they reviewed online, not meeting the standards, Secretary of the Interior standards, and they have asked for the opportunity to provide comment, and asked specifically for a public hearing. Public hearing is not required, but we also, it is up to the board whether or not it also wants to hold this application open pending their comments. But also, I don't know if the board has other questions or comments in regard to the presentation today. I just did want to bring that to your attention.
Right, thank you. This came in yesterday, so again, there's concern for commenting on this process, which seems to be the process, is to get all the input into the application that's possible. Are there thoughts on the board of maybe postponing this to and communicate with this applicant about getting their comments in writing, so we know specifically?
With these folks, with the Sherbrooke Inc.
Right.
Yeah.
In other words, give them the chance to submit.
To provide
written
comment.
Provide written comment at this point. I think that's appropriate. So, go ahead.
I don't take any issue with, I mean, I think we should hear them. Obviously, we should listen to an adjacent property owner to see what concerns they are,
Yes, and-
concerns they have, and the validation of them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure what that would do in the process of the project for a week, or, you know, I'm not.
Be 2 weeks, yeah.
It would be 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
How does that impact your project?
How does that impact the project?
Well, if I could speak to that point, honestly, isn't this the opportunity for those folks to have their comment period today, right now, in this meeting?
We just received a letter yesterday, and that's what we have on record. They could have sat through all of these meetings. I don't think they had
Right.
notice of these meetings, and I appreciate that. I think that, however, this applicant had been involved a long time with all of the public information. I don't think they have the advantage of obviously seeing how the project has changed. That's my personal point of view.
I would contend that if they cared enough how much it would change, these meetings are on a regular basis, they would be here at this meeting. I think this is a veiled attempt to just further delay the project. They've had the opportunity to be here. And just the same way we attended these meetings to prepare, they have the same opportunity. So,
It's a good point. I understand your point of view.
okay, thank you.
That's fine. Yes, Tom?
My question was a little bit having to do with the wording in the letter, where they didn't, in my way of thinking, say enough, and they claimed to something that is grossly misleading and distorted without saying exactly what they
Without supporting their
mean.
statement. I mean, it's a vague statement.
It is.
That's how I felt too, but at the same time, it's another historic property.
Yeah, this is what they're referring to.
Which picture is that?
That's
Cynthia?
aerial looking,
The aerial of Sugar.
It's in the packet from Cube 3.
Okay, I got too many papers.
Yes, I would like to say too that since this.
This one, yes, okay,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
that's them, and they're saying it's a distorted view, but it's a pretty vague.
Well, the Sherbrooke is closer to the front of the photo, too, so.
Well, I don't, it's certainly, this is a significant project, as you know, and it's been a significantly public project, and this letter comes from representing a significant point of view. And we have not been able to, the board has not been able to at this time to get any direction from the Common Council or corporate council relative to the process of listening to all aspects of this issue. So I think I would like to recommend that we postpone this, only postpone it to communicate with them, to get in writing what the issues are they're concerned about, to be able to make those a matter of a record that's been addressed. And I guess part of that is the approval for the certificate of appropriateness, critical nature of it from your timeline. Is there one?
There is. So, and I can certainly understand that letter and that perspective, and I think you folks understand ours. But an enormous amount of time, resource, your expertise, New York State SHPO, our expertise. We have been moving this along progressively, and I, this letter coming the night before this meeting is somewhat problematic. Yes, we have a timeline, and I would ask that we move forward within the next 2 weeks. And this letter has to be addressed within that 2-week period, or we
I
have
think
significant.
that's where we're heading. I think
Thank you.
Corporation Council needs to advise us.
Right.
To the intent of
And
your
then
comment. Yeah,
for comment, and then address this immediately in 2 weeks at the next meeting.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
also have more of the full board here, because
flush it out.
we're not.
Very good.
So I think that's the recommendations, is
Thank
that
you.
we will postpone this, get this in detail immediately, and get the advice from council relative to advancing the project at the next meeting, so having a decision on this at the next meeting.
It's important to the project schedule.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think it's fair to both sides.
Okay, thank you.
Does a question exist about the motive for this letter?
We,
We can't
no way of,
speculate, there, only what's written.
Nobody's
here.
speculating, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I do have to.
I
So if
think,
we're not voting.
if I could ask,
okay,
So
we're
do
not,
we need to vote to hold this
we're
open?
not voting
No, we
today.
don't need to.
We're postponing it and getting information. We will vote on it next meeting.
Okay.
what were you gonna say? I was just gonna say that, it may also be helpful, to, on your elevation on the eastern elevation, to be able to dot
North
in,
elevation.
sorry, no, the east one?
Oh, dot
The
in
east one,
the
dot in.
outline of the building?
The outline of where the
Sherbrooke.
Sherbrooke is. If you just give us a dotted outline.
Or even on the north elevation along Madison Street to show where it
The
stops.
Madison Street, yep.
You could do there too.
Yeah, so
Wait, what was that comment?
Just to
Dot
dot in
it.
where appropriate, the outline of the Sherbrooke.
Sherbrooke.
To understand,
the relationship
of
Do
the
it from-
relationship between the.
By doing an elevation.
Yeah.
was showing us.
I think
There,
a long time ago, we asked for a view on Madison, and I think you guys did it, a perspective view. It might be helpful if you have that, so you can show the relationship. I mean, you'll have to update, obviously, but,
Well, there are no new requirements at this point. We will get the
Yeah,
information,
right.
and we will communicate anything to you.
But that'll help communicate.
I mean,
the project.
it's not something that we're
Yeah.
requesting.
Do we need a motion to adjourn? Are we?
No, we're not done yet. We have one more
You
item.
need to go, okay.
Is this the quorum? That's the quorum.
Quorum is leaving, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a deadline next.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate your
Great
effort.
job.
Time.
Everything looks really good.
It's, as I said at the last meeting, project's really advanced wonderfully towards its intent. Thank
I
you.
really like the power lines under the sidewalks.
What's that?
I've been an advocate for that for a long time. And the introduction of American Elm on the
I have
streetscape.
it, I have it.
But thank you, you've done a lot of good stuff.
Okay, we have one more item on our agenda, even though.
We actually
been
don't.
removed.
We don't, that was removed. That's, your computer has been down,
so
just so you know.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you're,
Maybe I could ask it slightly differently. What's the latest on this project?
what, the latest is that the,
Applicant?
so this is a more general question that I think that we'll be addressing about people putting security gates on their commercial storefronts.
So this was not from an application, it was.
It's not from an application, it was a discussion, that, well, it will eventually be an application.
It'll come back.
Come to us.
It will come to us, but they've chosen not to appear today to discuss it, but rather come back, work through with zoning, because, just as a little background, zoning, historically has not recommended or actually allowed those commercial gates. However, their property owners, small business owners, especially up on, at the moment, on
North Salina.
North Salina Street.
Is a security gate a sign of a bad neighborhood? Is that what it is?
I think that the issue is more wanting to retain those open storefronts.
Well, that's a link, sure.
Are we, may I ask a question? Have we adjourned?
No.
Okay, we've lost our quorum. Is there a motion to
We haven't
adjourn?
adjourned.
And
Is there a motion to adjourn the
we
meeting?
can, we
Or do you want to
can
continue
yeah, we need a
discussing?
motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
And hold on, let me turn off the.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.